I'm going. The road ahead is hard to see. I cannot know for certain where you're leading me. My own heart is a mystery, and I'm unsure of your will. Oh, my desire to please you surely pleases still. Your voice warms winter's chill. Follow me, follow me, follow me. Yes, follow me. Lord, I know if I follow, you will lead me from fear. So I will trust you always, knowing you are near. My God is always near. Follow me, follow me, follow me. Yes, follow me. Lord, I will trust you always. Where else could I go? I don't know where I'm going. The road ahead is hard to see. I cannot know for certain where you're leading me. I know you're leading me. My God, please lead me. Follow me, follow me, follow me. Yes, follow me. La di da di da da.
So we will begin this time of prayer, this tonight with an opening prayer. So hello, Father, hello, Jesus, hello, Holy Spirit. Thank you for being here. Thank you for leading us through the moments of each day to come here now and have this time to simply listen to you, spend time with you. We put into your hands, Lord, all our senses, our minds, our hearts, our worries, our distractions, our thoughts. As the song says, may you lead us, Lord, into an encounter with you tonight as we listen to your word and share with you our lives. Make this prayer in your name. Amen. So, welcome to the second session of the School of the Word series called Following in the Footsteps of Jesus. And a warm greeting especially to those who are here on Zoom for the first time, or you're listening to these guidelines for the first time. My name is Maureen, and I'm a lay member of the Verbum Dei Missionary Family. And tonight I will be breaking the word before our time of silent prayer. So we enter into this series, called Following into the Footsteps of Jesus, starting by praying with the baptism of Jesus, rediscovering that this following of Jesus, of living as he lives and loving as he loves, flows from our core identity as a beloved child of God. And last week, what stayed with me was simply one point that Letty shared in her guidelines when she said that for God, I am his child. And to tell you the truth, that night, I found it extremely difficult to enter into prayer, so distracted. And yet, through the events of the week that follow, after the guidelines, living through each moment of my week, I came to realize that I really needed to hear those words again, to rediscover that for God, I am his child, to run to these words that for me are my anchors and let them trickle into the areas, into the moments when I needed the extra boost, the encouragement to live my day, to respond. And the image that comes, recently, we're talking about Chinese New Year. I just had reunion dinner and I was looking at my little niece, meeting all the adults again after a while. And I saw how, she was so free when she gets a bit scared when all the grand aunties and uncles come and like want her attention. She just goes to hug her dad's legs, to hide behind, or to go to her mom and then like to get a hug. And then later she comes and plays with us again. Whenever she was feeling shy and uncomfortable, you need this image of the child going to her parents for whatever she needed. And although as grown adults, maybe we don't need that constant physical touch of our parents to reground or to find our center in times of discomfort or uncertainty. But there's always that movement, that sense of clarity, that movement of running to our anchor, our source of security. That's something we all still continue to do, even when we're adults. The question then is, what is our anchor? What or who is our source of security? And where we find our sense of groundedness? As Christians, we believe that the anchor of our lives is God and his everlasting love for us. All the peoples, the objects, the thoughts, the beliefs we hold, that are dear, the ritual behaviors, the habits that we form, all of them, they are expressions of our Father. These things that give us comfort, that gives us grounding. They are not God, but they are expressions, areas where we find God. And that helps us to believe that God is here, as the song says. God is near. Our Father who does not abandon his creatures, and also at every moment upholds and sustains all his children into being. And we always experience that sense of yearning, right? That yearning that is really only satisfied, as the famous quote from St. Augustine, there are hearts that restlessness, they are only rested when you rest in God. And that is why Jesus is so attractive. His life, he shows us how to live this deep connection and trust in his Father. Until to the end, he lived his mission. He was always showing us that trust. His life is so attractive because the way he lived his humanity, the way he lives his life, is that model and way to live our own identity as beloved son, as beloved daughter of God, always dependent on God our Father. And the Catechism from the Catholic Church tells us this precisely, that Christ invites us to this filial trust in the providence of our Heavenly Father. As in 1 Peter, it says, cast all your anxieties on him, because here we have a God who cares about you. And in our day-to-day living moments, this truth of faith that we always want to go back and anchor on, we know that the following in these footsteps of Jesus, living this identity is a journey we take daily. And if we are honest, it's the marathon of our lives, We need all the time to listen to God, share with us who we are for Him as we walk, as we follow Jesus. Because we know that this journey is long. And there are many times as we continue to follow Him, we lose our foothold. Sometimes not so strong, fall down, right? Or we become distracted. There's something in the distance that looks very attractive. We experience, the moments where we have grown overly attached to other things, other gifts that came from God, but ultimately are not God. Or moments where we choose to walk away and then we decide, okay, I'm going to anchor on something else. Little by little, we live these undulating hills, up and down valleys or seasons. Sometimes we can live it as missteps, but increasingly I see we can learn to live it with a gaze that shifts away from just the failures and the burdens, but with a heart that also ponders with God on where the opportunities to grow, where are the learning moments that we are invited to grow and deepen in our trust and our relationship with Him. And for me at least, to experience this shifting of gaze is a sign for me that filial trust that Jesus invites all of us to is growing. To believe that God is present, He is near us in all seasons, in the midst of discomfort, in the midst of celebrations, or simply in the midst of change. And with that, we again come to find we have what we need to persevere in taking one more step in that following. To say, okay, only for today, I will trust you all the way. Day by day, we live this. Then the next question then is, what is trust? We hear this 5-letter word very often, Trust me, trust your boss, trust your parents. But what is trust? For a long time now, I struggled to put words to this. And I'm a visual person. So for me, the word trust was always in images, like I was sharing with that scene with my niece. But of late, I found this definition by Charles Feldman to be very helpful, which is simply this. Trust is the choice to risk making something you value vulnerable to another person's actions. And of course, this Charles Feldman, in his definition, this is in his book about trust in the workplace. But if this is the question that you have on your mind, perhaps the invitation is to enter or read the passage later to ask Jesus, what is He telling you about this word trust? And as I started, I found that this definition helped me to enter into the passage of Luke chapter 5, verses 1 to 11. We might be familiar with this. This is the passage of the call of the first disciples, specifically the call of Simon the fisherman. And in the passage, Luke accounts in quite detail the events that transpired that will mark a key and definite moment in Simon's discipleship. What happened in that encounter with Simon, we know would change his life plan fundamentally. While he was already familiar with Jesus, who had healed his mother-in-law, the events then marked the start of a closer and intimate relationship with Jesus as master and friend. The change from being a fisherman who lived on boats and with a crew to being a follower of Jesus, itinerant with no fixed place. And to help us to enter into this time of prayer, I'd like to share some points that struck me as I prayed with this passage. The first point that came to my attention when I was rereading this passage was that the entire conversation that Simon had with Jesus happened on the boat. And I don't know, it's something very small, but it struck me again to see this. I'm not someone who particularly enjoys boats. So the image of boat comes off, you have to learn how to balance. There might be some waves. It's not really steady all the time. And yet all the time, this conversation, this encounter was happening there, in the waves, the backdrops of certain movements, maybe of ambiguity. And when I saw that, the invitation from Jesus to push out into the deep became so much richer, and I really read it differently. because it was the first time that I saw, like with a new eyes, that Jesus was on the boat when he asked Simon to put out into the deep water. It they were two of them were on that same vessel. I'm not sure how far they were, but he was there when he invited Simon to push out, to risk, to choose to make that decision of something valuable, his time, his nets, his crew's energy, based on that invitation from Jesus. And in putting out the deep water, I was imagining, first they might have to go out a bit further to shore. There would be a higher chance of getting into some trouble, if the waves suddenly get more choppy. Or perhaps even someone might fall and the risk of drowning could be real. And it struck me then and then as seeing that Simon's response when Jesus asked him was actually quite simple, because there and then, seeing Jesus on the boat, who was there physically, and then asking him to push out into deep water to put out his nets, he could see that Jesus had chosen in a way to put his well-being and safety in Simon's skills as a fisherman, as a boatman, trusting that when that happened, the boat would not sink, that they would all still be well. So putting out into the deep waters and letting down the nets was something that Jesus trusted in Simon's boat skills. And so it was a simple try that wasn't complicated. And perhaps reading Simon's next response, I saw, maybe he wasn't 100% convinced, but his response was not something dramatic as I used to imagine, or not something full of heroics and drama, but it was a simple response to someone whom he respected, from someone he saw had put some trust in him. And so he said, well, okay, since you're in the boat with me and you can ask this, I'll tell you what I know. We have tried, but we have not caught anything. But now, at your order, I will put again. And it struck me so much to see that trust. It takes away the drama or the upheaval sometimes when we have to make decisions. And what might be this deep water in our own realities? And how I'm invited to live this and to dialogue with Jesus. Sometimes the deep water might be a new season, a new stage of life. Or we find ourselves in this new year, that has just started, chasing new dreams, finding new opportunities for ourselves. We are learning to respond to changing health or maybe changing situations in our lives. We are learning to perhaps make plans amidst the rising instability in the economy, how to be prudent. We are taking on new responsibilities. We are learning again how to accompany and love the people that work with us, our spouses, our children, our parents, as they navigate their own moments, their own changes, whether it is dark valleys, developmental changes, be it the different situations. What do these deep waters symbolize for you? And sometimes it seems that the more we live life, the more it seems we do not know. The more that sense of certainty becomes not so sure. Let us look at this passage again and see the invitation is to just recognize that Jesus is already in the boat with us when he invites us to push out into the deep. Although we may find that we are not on solid ground, we are constantly balancing, adjusting, learning to ride the waves of life that comes, and each day could be a different wave in itself. We need to remember that Jesus is in our boat, and he doesn't ask us to push out or go into the deep from afar, but he's right there, near with us, and we can trust to follow him when he calls us. Because the invitation to push out, it is, although both a gift and a task, let us not be overwhelmed when we see all the tasks that we have to do, or be confused. I don't know what is it I need to do exactly. Let in this moment, let us ask for help from Jesus to see what Simon saw. The gift of trust from someone else, the gift of trust from Jesus, the choice that someone has made to risk putting something precious to them into our hands, and to see how Jesus has chosen to put what is precious to him, maybe a person, maybe a project, maybe something that we have to care for or physically vulnerable in our hands. We can ask for help to stay open like Simon. And in return, ask him and journey dialogue with him to ask what we are, to put what we hold dear and important into his hands as well, so that he can act in our lives.
Are you sleeping?
And this choice to risk, this choice to play something precious, we see that in the Gospels, it is not just for us. And it might be seed or plant for so many other people. As we continue down the passage, we see out that when Peter chose to put the net down, he caught so many fish, so much so that on his own, his boat could not handle. He had to call other boats. He had to ask other people to come and help him to gather all the fish. And I saw in that way again that his choice facilitated an opening for his companions and co-workers to come closer to meet Jesus in their own way. Although sometimes we might not see how it is possible or what might happen next when we choose to trust, when we choose to follow, let us not forget, or let us ask Jesus to help us to believe that these could be seeds for something else, seeds for others. And for me on this point, when I was thinking about this point, what came was an experience that I recently had while traveling, because I had experienced the privilege of receiving the benefits when someone else chose to trust. So the experience I had happened in Bandung, in Central Java. My father lives in Indonesia, and his job allows us the privilege to have a driver whom let's call him Park J. So this December, we went on a family trip to go to Bandung, which is hilly. And at one point of time, 6 of us in the car, we suddenly saw that we had to go up this very, very steep slope. So steep that they had to warden and ask one car to go up at one time. And it was a bit scary because the car is big and it's not a four-wheeler and it's on dirt road and it was a bit rainy. And my dad is not someone who is particularly calm, especially on drive trips. He's typically the one who is at the back checking the Google map all the time to see, have you taken this road? Have you gone this road? Have you gone there? And yet, on this trip, I saw for the first time how my dad was so calm sitting in the front seat. He was just speaking to Park J, our driver, and telling us what to prepare next. And it really helped because his calmness, his groundedness helped us as a family to enjoy the situation, to be prepared for moments. There was one point he said we might have to get out of the car, but to enjoy that challenge together and to come and see what would happen next. A bit scared, but hopeful. And in that moment, I saw, when reflecting on this, that this trust between my father and Park J didn't happen overnight. And it was because my father could trust his friend, his companion Park J with his life each time he stepped in the car, with the life of his family members. And in that trust, they could calmly speak about what to happen next. That helped us so much, all as a family in that in that drive trip. And so when we got out, eventually the car drove up the slope and we were all celebrating. It was really such a moment of community to experience that. That together, because my father trusted, we were able to live that moment differently, knowing the challenge, yet experiencing that strong certainty that our family would be okay, even if we had to drive through that steep slope and that moment of the risk. And in our lives, perhaps it is the same way, because there are many moments when our invitation to trust Jesus might involve making choices, might involve interacting with real people, speaking with others, thinking about situations we have. So let us remember from that point I saw that trust really was not just between my dad and his driver, but how it helped and changed the way our whole family lived that situation. And if you have moments where you are situations in your life, let us also perhaps open the door to dialogue about these situations when we can trust. And seeing my dad and Park J, just talk and think about what to do, that reciprocity in choosing to place what was valuable then into the hands of each other, this continuous exchange, as I reflect on it, I saw also that it grew incrementally. Just like in the gospel, these different dialogues, Jesus invited Peter to trust in him one step at a time, from getting into the boat to putting out into the deep, to then to become fisher of men. And there came a point at time perhaps where Peter recognizes, just as we do, the immensity, the greatness, the depth of what this choice will entail. And Peter was afraid, you see. He asked Jesus to go away. Do you really want me to follow you? Do you really know me? But yet Peter chose to be open because eventually he decided to still follow Jesus. He chose to be open and hold on to the words of Jesus that followed. Do not be afraid. Those words that we so often need to hear and believe in. And so slowly and consistently, just like my dad and Park Jae, who had built this trust based on 16 years of being together, many moments of being in the car, journeying together. Slowly and consistently, we learn how to build this trust with Jesus through prayer, through spending time, maybe sometimes not talking, but just being there together. And we are invited in this moment tonight of prayer to have another time with Him, to build again this trust, and to ask Him, what are you choosing? What do you ask me to choose to share with you in this moment? What does it mean? How are you inviting me to trust you in this season of my life? As we come into this time of prayer, let us take this time to enter into the passage and ask Jesus for many moments of how we are invited to follow Him in the small and big life decisions and changes. And let us stay with Him, reading the passage slowly, staying with a word or line, entering, imagining the scene. But most importantly, let us listen to Him, share with us what He wants us to say. And let us see this moment as prayer, as a time of learning how to build and grow in this trust with Him. To see that even tonight, He chooses to place something valuable, His time, His love, in our hands, for us, for the many people around them. And so we end this time of guidelines and we enter into 20 minutes of silent prayer. In a moment, I will flash the handout.